Hey everyone, it's Jaden from the Custom Cubes team at SpeedCubeShop.com, and today I'm going to show you how to do a basic setup on your RS3 M. We'll grab it later. Now that we've got the cube and the accessories out of the box, what you're gonna need for this process is just the cube and the screwdriver. So we definitely recommend also having a rag, towel, paper towel, tissue, just something that you can wipe the cube down and your hands down. That way it keeps the cube clean and the work surface clean. So the first thing we're gonna do is the core lube. So we're just gonna pop off the center caps on all the sides here. So for the core lube, we're gonna be using Galaxy. As it is a thicker lube, it can reduce some of that spring noise that you may typically get with an RS3. Now it's not in all cubes, but it does happen pretty often. So just a safe bet is to get something a little bit thicker to kind of dampen it, and also adds a bit more of a smooth feel to it. So for the core lube, what we pretty much recommend is just putting a few drops right in the little spaces here beside the screw head and the dual tensioning system there, just so it actually reaches the spring. And then just give it a couple of U2s. We recommend probably about 10, just to make sure that it spreads evenly around the spring. And then you pretty much just continue the process for all other 5 sides on the cube. So now go ahead and grab your screwdriver, because now we're gonna be working on tensioning. So pretty much tensioning is a really good thing to get down right. That way you have an even feel across the entire, and it's good to have even corner cutting and an even screw depth across the cube. So the tighter you go on the cube, the more likely you are to not have pops, but the less corner cutting you're gonna have, and then vice versa. So the looser the cube is, the more likely you are to have pops, but the easier it is to corner cut. So there's definitely a fine balance between the two to achieve an optimal performance. So for tensioning, for tightening the cube, you turn it clockwise. For loosening the cube, you turn it counterclockwise. I like to do it in small increments, so quarter turns and half turns. That way I'm not doing a drastically big turn and it's hard to compare both sides. So now let's just start on the white side. So the feel we're going for is faster, but still pop resistant and controllable. Out of the box, it's a little bit sluggish for what we want. So we're going to loosen it. We're gonna start off with something like a quarter turn anti-clockwise on all sides. So now that we've loosened all the sides by about a quarter turn, this is gonna give us a base for what we're trying to gauge our feel off of. So pretty much turn one of the sides, and that's going to become the starting feel for your cube. So turn it a little bit, maybe test the flexibility and the turning, and then also maybe even corner cutting. And that's kind of your base feel for what you want. And then you're gonna go to another side and see if it matches the previous side. So the red side is a bit tighter than what we want, so I would suggest just turning it anti-clockwise, starting off with just a quarter turn, and then testing it and seeing if that fixed it. If not, and you need to go more, then feel free to keep turning it until it matches the feel of the previous side. So it feels pretty even, and now we can move on to the next side, and you pretty much just repeat that process for all the sides, making sure they're all even. So this is a side that is abnormally tight, and we're gonna show you what to do to fix this. You can judge it by the corner cutting. So as you can tell, it's not corner cutting at 45. And if we bring it, to the line here, it's a bit of a struggle to corner cut it as compared to another side here, like blue, corner cuts at 45 with no problem. Another way you can tell is by stretching the pieces apart. As you can tell, it's not as wide as the other sides. So you can tell that it's a lot tighter. So this is definitely one of those examples of doing half turns. As this is a really tight side, it is safe to do a half turn and definitely not overshoot. So do a half turn, test, see if it's even with the other sides. In this case, it's still a little tight, so we'll do another half turn. And we're getting a lot closer now, so we can start doing quarter turns. So this is an example of a side that is really, really loose. It corner twists a lot and it's really prone to popping, which is something we pretty much just want to avoid at all costs. One of the best ways to tell if it's a really loose side is by stretching out the pieces. So if we take a look here, as you can tell, I can fit, about a full finger between the pieces there. And if we go to another side, it's not nearly as wide. And this is me using a lot of force. All right, so now we're gonna tighten this side. And this is, again, another good example of using half turns instead of quarter turns. So first, just do a half turn there. It's definitely still too loose. So we're gonna do another half turn. So it's getting closer, still not quite there. I'd say it's safe to probably do about another half turn. And we're almost there. It almost matches, so we're gonna do a quarter turn. All right, and it feels pretty even. So the next step here is something you can experiment with. It is the dual adjustment system, which comes on a lot of cubes nowadays. So this affects the spring compression, which pretty much just affects how much force is being put onto the centerpiece. The higher the setting you are on, the more force is put onto the centerpiece, which in turn creates a more stable but slightly slower feel to the cube. If you want to learn more about this, go ahead and check out the video in the card on the top left. So this is what the turning looks like on setting 0. So to adjust the settings, pretty much take your tool and line it up with the grooves that are in the adjustment piece here, and you just turn counterclockwise. Each click represents one setting, so one click would be setting 1, 2 clicks would be setting 2, and then just so on. And then you'll hear a louder click, which pretty much just means it reset back to 0. So starting at setting 0, we're gonna go up to 8, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now this is what the turning is like with all of it on the 8th setting. You can tell the cube is a lot more stable, but it is a bit slower, not by too much, but it is definitely noticeable. So once you set your dual adjustment to how you want it to feel, then you can start putting your center caps back on, and then we'll go right into piece lube. So pretty much what piece lube does is it just adds a layer of lube between your pieces, and it usually makes it smoother, and depending on what lube you use can make it slower or faster. If you want to learn more about this, go ahead and check out the video in the card over here. So for the piece lube, we're going to be using Martian. It's a good all-arounder. It makes your cube nice and smooth and also adds a little bit of speed into it and makes it nice and controllable. So the first thing you want to do is just give yourself a little space to put the lube into, kind of like this. And you take your lube, and then you just want to put like 6 drops in there. That's what we recommend. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then just break it in, just scramble the cube, give it a few turns, and then you just solve it at the end. And it should have a pretty even layer across all the pieces. If it doesn't quite feel like you've put enough in, go ahead and feel free to put in a little bit more. I don't recommend going over 6 drops at a time, just that way you don't overdo it. So now you've set up your RS3 M 2020, feel free to go back and make some adjustments, adding more lube, changing the tensions, messing around with the dual adjustment if need be. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. So you can pick up any of the lubes and the cube used in this video in the description below or in the card above. So feel free to check out our reviews playlist here and our lubricant video here.